checkered with American vessels at anchor, and Indian canoes rapidly shooting across the water in every direction. It was formerly the seat of an extensive fur trade. At present it is noted for the great amounts of trout and white fish annually exported. Fort Mackinac stood on a rocky bluff overlooking the town. The ruins of Fort Holmes are on the apex of the island. It was built by the British in the War of 1812 under the name of Fort George, and was changed to its present appellation after the surrender to the Americans, in compliment to the memory of Major Holmes, who fell in the attack upon the island. The old town of Michilimackinac stood at the extreme point of the peninsula of Michigan, 9 miles south of the island. 8 years before La Salle's expedition, Father Marquette, the French missionary, visited this spot with a party of Hurons, upon whom he prevailed to locate themselves. A fort was soon constructed, and became an important post. It continued to be the seat of the fur trade, and the undisturbed rendezvous of the Indian tribes during the whole period that the French exercised dominion over the Canadas. Here at Michilimackinac, La Salle purchased a rich cargo of furs, exchanging them for his goods at an immense profit. The Griffin, laden with wealth, set out on her return, and was wrecked by the way with total loss. La Salle, with his companions, had embarked in birch canoes, and descending Lake Michigan to its near southern extremity, they landed and erected a fort which they called Miamis. Then they carried their canoes across to the Illinois River and paddled down the stream until they came near the present site of Peoria, where they established another fort, which La Salle, grief-stricken in his view of his loss, named Hartsoor. Here the energetic and courageous adventurer left his men in winter quarters, while, with but 3 companions, he traversed the wilderness on foot, amidst the snows of winter, to Fort Frontenac, a distance of 1,500 miles. After an absence of several weeks, he returned with additional men, and the means of building a large and substantial flat-bottomed boat, with which to descend the Illinois River to the Mississippi, and the latter stream to its mouth. The romantic achievement was successfully accomplished. The banners of France were unfurled along the banks of the majestic river and upon the shores of the Gulf of Mexico. This whole region which France claimed by the right of discovery was named in honor of the King of France, Louisiana. Its limits were necessarily quite undefined. In 1684 a French colony of 280 persons was sent out to effect a settlement on the lower Mississippi. Passing by the mouth of the river without discovering it, they landed in Texas, and took possession of the country in the name of the King of France. Disaster followed disaster. La Salle died, and the colonists were exterminated by the Indians. Not long after this, all the country west of the Mississippi was ceded by France to Spain, and again, some years after, was surrendered back again by Spain to France. We have not space here to allude to the details of these varied transactions, but this comprehensive record seems to be essential to the full understanding of the narrative upon which we have entered. It was in the year 1763 that Louisiana was ceded by France to Spain. In the year 1800 it was yielded back to France, under Napoleon, by a secret article in the Treaty of Essen-Ile-de-France. It had now become a matter of infinite moment to the United States that the great republic should have undisputed command of the Mississippi from its source to its mouth. President Jefferson instructed our minister at Paris, Robert Livingston, to negotiate with the French government for the purchase of Louisiana. France was then at war with England. The British fleet swept triumphantly all the seas. Napoleon, conscious that he could not protect Louisiana from British arms, consented to the sale. We are informed that on the 10th of April, 1803, he summoned 2 of his ministers in council, and said to them: "I am fully sensible of the value of Louisiana, and it was my wish to repair the error of the French diplomatists who abandoned it in 1763. I have scarcely recovered it before I run the risk of losing it. But if I am obliged to give it up, it shall cost more to those who force me to part with it than to those to whom I yield it. The English have despoiled France of all her northern possessions in America, and now they covet those of the South. I am determined that they shall not have the Mississippi. Although Louisiana is but a trifle compared with their vast possessions in other parts of the globe, yet, judging from the vexation they have manifested on seeing it return to the power of France, I am certain that their first object will be to obtain possession of it. They will probably commence the war in that quarter. They have 20 vessels in the Gulf of Mexico, and our affairs in St. Domingo are getting worse, since the death of Leclerc. The conquest of Louisiana might be easily made, and I have not a moment to lose in putting it out of their reach. I am not sure but that they have already began an attack upon it. Such a measure would be in accordance with their habits, and in their place I should not wait. I am inclined, in order to deprive them of all prospect of ever possessing it, to cede it to the United States. Indeed, I can hardly say I cede it, for I do not yet possess it. But if I wait but a short time, my enemies may leave me nothing but an empty title to grant to the republic I wish to conciliate. They only ask for one city of Louisiana, but I consider the whole colony as lost, and I believe that in the hands of this rising power it will be more useful to the political and even the commercial interests of France than if I should attempt to retain it. Let me have both of your opinions upon this subject." One of the ministers, Barbé Marbois, cordially approved of the plan of cession. The other opposed it. After long deliberation the conference was closed, without Napoleon making his decision known. The next day he sent for Barbé Marbois and said to him: "The season for deliberation is over. I have determined to part with Louisiana. I shall give up not only New Orleans, but the whole colony without reservation. That I do not undervalue Louisiana, I have sufficiently proved, as the object of my first treaty with Spain was to recover it. But though I regret parting with it, I am convinced that it would be folly to persist in trying to keep it. I commission you, therefore, to negotiate this affair with the envoys of the United States. Do not wait the arrival of Mr. Monroe, but go this very day and confer with Mr. Livingston. Remember, however, that I need ample funds for carrying on the war, and I do not wish to commence it by levying new taxes. During the last century France and Spain have incurred great expense in the improvement of Louisiana, for which her trade has never indemnified them. Large sums have been advanced to different companies, which have never returned to the treasury. It is fair that I should require payment for these. Were I to regulate my demands by the importance of this territory to the United States, they would be unbounded. But being obliged to part with it, I shall be moderate in my terms. Still, remember, I must have 50 millions of francs, $10 millions, and I will not consent to take less. I would rather make some desperate effort to preserve this fine country." Negotiations commenced that day. Soon Mr. Monroe arrived. On the 30th of April, 1803, the treaty was signed, and the United States paying $15 millions for the entire territory. It was stipulated by Napoleon that Louisiana should be, as soon as possible, incorporated into the Union, and that its inhabitants should enjoy the same rights, privileges, and immunities as other citizens of the United States. The third article of the treaty, securing to them these benefits, was drawn up by Napoleon himself. He presented it to the plenipotentiaries with these words: "Make it known to the people of Louisiana that we regret to part with them; that we have stipulated for all the advantages they could desire; and that France, in giving them up, has insured to them the greatest of all. They could never have prospered under any European government as they will when they become independent. But while they enjoy the privileges of liberty, let them ever remember that they are French, and preserve for their mother country that affection which a common origin inspires." This purchase was an immense acquisition to the United States. "I consider," said Mr. Livingston, that from this day the United States take rank with the first powers of Europe, and now she has entirely escaped from the power of England.